afternoon, everybody. Before we start, maybe just a check if you can hear us clearly. Okay naman. Welcome to this week's edition of Beyond Connections, which is a bi-monthly live session conducted by MyTrade in order to address your burning questions about the stock market. This week, we are a little out of schedule. We were supposed to go last week, but as you know, it's earnings season and we have been quite inundated with the earnings reports and briefings of different companies. But thankfully, we're here now, and I'm with you today. Our market technician Isaiah, and what our senior analyst Herman De La Paz, and I'm Elizabeth from the research department of Abaca Securities. So while we're waiting for your questions for this session, what do you think, Herman? What's been happening in the market lately that you want to highlight?
As Bess mentioned kanina, we were rescheduled. This event was rescheduled because of we were in the midst of the earnings season last week. So since the earnings season is drawing to a close, I think it's important to mention the notable performances of some companies that outperformed expectations or underperformed expectations, or those that surpassed their pre-pandemic performances. Siguro from my coverage at least, one notable performer is Bloom because its Q1 earnings is already half of the full year consensus expectation. So Q1 was really a surprise performance, and uh, from their last briefing, they're giving some indications that Q2 will be able to sustain its strength because they are seeing increasing footfall in their casinos. So that's a good sign for Bloom, and we think we also upgraded our target price to 11.80 for the stock. And then on the other side of the spectrum is Converge. The Q1 performance of Converge is only around 20% of the full year consensus expectation. So that's an underperformance, and this usually because of the severe slowdown in its subscriber net additions. So we now for Converge we downgraded our target price to around 12.80, and now we are also hold on the stock. And then lastly, RLC's performance has exceeded its pre-pandemic levels by around 42%. So that's a huge outlier compared to its peers. So that's why we maintain our preference for that stock. And then on the other hand, those property companies that have huge exposures to the residential space are lagging behind. So that's why we still maintain our preference for RLC in that sector, and we prefer SMPH over Ali. So, how about you, Bess? What have you seen recently from the sectors then?
For the banks one, I think the results for first quarter has been uh, very positive, but some of the banks have had uh, performances that are not as good as the others. So for the banks that we cover, we're still positive on BDO, Metro Bank. Although we're seeing that the banks are already feeling the effects of the higher interest rates, not just on the asset yield side, but mostly also on the funding costs. So that's been a strain on the expansion of their net interest margins. So that's something to look at going forward, especially since tomorrow the BSP will announce their decision on the policy rate. So we will have a clear outlook on where interest rates might go and funding costs might go for the rest of the year, on whether or not the BSP will pause tomorrow or will still go on with their rate hikes. In terms of the companies that have reported better than expected results in the first quarter, I think a good one to highlight would be Manila Water, since its first quarter results are about um, were faster or grew faster than what the market is anticipating for this year. I think um, the market has not yet fully priced in the tariff increases that it implemented starting this year in January. So we might see some upgrades still on the forecasts for Manila Water, and that would be positive for the stock. And also, um, since they were able to sign finally the revised concession agreement that reduces the regulatory risk significantly for the near future. So that would be one of the stocks that we we should or we might want to watch over the next few months. What about you, IC? What sort of technical
On the technical front,
perspective
the
that you
chart I want to highlight today is a stock that keeps on keeping on. Drew, can you show them the chart, please? Yeah.
keep on keeping up?
Keeps on keeping on.
And its name is in the
It's a
phrase.
keeper. It's keeper holdings. Hopefully the chart will load soon. Hold on, so we'll have to check. Uptrend since about December of last year. So we'll watch on chart. So it's been it's been an uptrend since December of last year. It's been able to hold the 200-day moving average. Recently, it's been consolidating on light volumes, so technicians like to look at that. It's usually a sign of continuation in the uptrend. And the research team is also bullish on this correct.
Yes, unfortunately, we don't have our consumer analyst today. He's attending a briefing, but we are bullish on Keeper. This is still on the return of on-premise consumption of alcohol and liquor. So that's that's one of the things. That's the main thing that's driving Keeper's positive prospects for this year. So let's go to your questions. For the first question from Hyperbots. May I ask about ASEN? We can't say our recommendations because it's public, but what do you think about ASEN, Herman?
Okay, so for ASEN, we saw that several of its projects are already coming online and are starting to contribute to earnings. That's why we saw a huge increase then in its bottom line profit in Q1. Okay. However, and also on top of that, the company is also already a net seller to the spot market, so that's a huge positive. That's why we upgraded our recommendation on ASEN. Now, why not? Why not buy? It's because we are still waiting for some indications from several of its portfolios across different countries where they have exposures. So we are still coming up with the numbers, and currently the stock is now at 25 times PE. So that's already a huge premium compared to its peers. That's why we are not yet keen on. We're not yet that sanguine on the stock yet. So that's why.
What do you have the chart ready? Or can we show the chart for ASEN?
We have no chance. No
Okay, technical difficulties on the
So-
chart. So try to imagine.
So
You
you
were
can describe
descriptive.
that. So below the 200-day technicals on ASEN. I guess it's a long shot. It could be in the long run a reverse head and shoulders. The price is a long way away from a potential neckline. Maybe 7 pesos while it's trading at 6 pesos ngayon. So it seems to be a long way.
So it's one of those rare conversions na the fundamental and technical perspective is in agreement. Tama ba? Next question from Chris Yao. Considering the derating of the PSEI that we wrote about today, how many standard deviations is it from its 10-year mean? If I recall correctly, it's actually very low, trading very low compared to its long-term mean. I think it's nearing a little less than two standard deviations below its 10-year mean. So that also shows that the derating of the PSEI, you can also see it from that kind of perspective. Next question. From Rob Haka. Can I ask po, ano po yung significance ng PE when it comes to choosing what stocks to own? Nabasa ko lang po sa short takes. So that's good that you're reading short takes. For those that are, since we're public, for those that are not yet signed, MyTrade short takes is our daily report in which we write about what we think is happening in the market and will happen in the market, and what we think you should be looking at in order to make the best investment decisions that you can. So what do you think, Herman? What can you say about the PE when it comes to um, choosing which stocks to own?
So significance of PE. PE is just one of the many valuation metrics that we use in order to compare if one stock is more expensive or cheaper than its peers. So that's just one of those. And so for PE, we are comparing the company's price to its earnings per share. So those companies with higher PEs are more expensive, while those with lower PEs are cheaper than its peers. However, we do not solely base our decisions on that. So that's just like one part of the picture. So sometimes a company is expensive for a reason, and sometimes a stock is cheap for a reason. So besides looking at its valuations, like for example, looking at its PE, we also look at its growth prospects or any other issues that concern that stock in order to determine if a stock is a buy or a hold or a sell. So, yeah, to cut it short, the PE is just to gauge if a company is cheaper or more expensive than its peers, although that's not the sole determinant of in order for us to arrive at a recommendation.
Okay, next, what's the from Shane Custodio? What's the forecast on REITs, especially Phil REITs?
Yeah, okay. I think I also plan to write about REITs for tomorrow short takes. Okay, what can we say about it right now? We're actually updating our forecast for this year since some companies or some REIT companies are already declared their Q1 dividends for this year. So what's the forecast on REIT? So some companies are most likely to downgrade their guidance for this year because of downsizing of tenants, some pre-terminations or lower occupancy rates. So that's why some companies are most likely to see some downgrades in dividends for this year. Now for Phil REIT, they also released their Q1 earnings, which I think shows around 10% decrease in net income, if I'm not mistaken. And also their dividends from their Q4 earnings is also a significant decline on a quarterly basis. So that's why we're not very keen on Phil REIT, and we are still more positive on other REITs that whose earnings are more stable and whose dividend yields are much higher, such as Siri.
Okay, do we look at REITs in terms of the PE, or is it not
You
something
could,
that we
you could look at REITs and like, what's our REIT entry like?
Phil REIT.
Yung question is on Phil REIT?
Sorry. Okay, so
I feel it.
in terms of entries, you could use like a Bollinger Band to try to buy at the lower end of the range. Buy like your REITs if you like them. You can buy them at the lower price.
Siguro just to add, REITs are primarily dividend plays, so we usually look at its dividend yield in order to gauge the attractiveness of the REIT. So yeah.
Okay. Next question, what is also from Shane Custodio? What's your take on MPI's tender offer? So that was the recent news last
Yeah.
2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. So a consortium of companies are um, conducting a tender offer for MPI with the view to delist the company. So the tender offer price was set at 463. What can you say about that?
Yeah. So for MPI, yeah, we think the tender offer price is quite low, considering that MPI's stake on Meralco alone is already much higher than that on a per share basis. So this does not include yet the MPI stake on its tollways, hospitals, and railroad. So we think that's a really I think it's very much low compared to our fair value estimate for the stock and also for the consensus estimates for the stock. However, we still recommend to tend for shareholders to tender because this just to protect them on the off chance that the delisting pushes through, so that they won't be left holding an illiquid stock. Now, for in case shareholders tender and the delisting pushes through, so they will be able to exit their investment at 4.60p. And another scenario is that if shareholders tender and the delisting does not push through, but the consortium rebids at a higher price, so that should offer a higher exit price for shareholders. And then second, another scenario is that if our shareholders tender and the delisting does not push through, so their shares will just be returned to them. And however, we're already a buy on MPI even without the delisting prospect in the picture, because we still see value in holding the stock. So we still appreciate its intrinsic value, because one, it's always planned to be publicly listed in the near future, and also of the recovering prospects of MyTrade. So yeah, so basically, even though we think it's a low tender offer price, we advise our clients to tender their shares in order to be not stuck with illiquid MPI shares.
Tangentially related to the tender offer of MPI, that if it is successful and if it delists from the PSE, since MPI is a member of the PSEI or the PSE index, one thing to look out for is which company will replace it in the index, which could mean that whichever company would replace it could experience positive volatility, since there will be higher liquidity on the stock if it enters the index. So there are a number of candidates. Uh, uh, there are four candidates actually. So it could be Bloom, RRH, ICNPF, or Nickel, but we won't know. So those are the most probable so far, but we won't know yet which one would actually replace NPI on the index if it delists, since we don't know yet when NPI will delist. So it will depend on which of those stocks perform um, positively or are able to increase the market cap higher than the other candidates. So that's also something to look out for. Next question from Rob again. What's RTA, or technical analysis for GT cap? I think we can show our
chart, so
yeah. I think we can show the chart now.
actually GP cap. So red moving average is the 200-day MA. Actually, it's quite bullish. So breaks this down trend line. It looks like a buy on dips candidate. Looks like it's going to challenge out upcoming resistance here at 528. So the configuration is bullish. If you're looking to enter the trend line, the lower end, which is maybe 594, 50-day moving average.
Okay. Incidentally, also GTCap announced its earnings for the first quarter yesterday, and it was quite good. They saw positive performance from Toyota Motors Philippines, which saw a doubling in net income during the first quarter, mostly because of higher margins. So that's also probably driving the positive sentiment on GTCap. And next, from Alan Ventura, Ma'am Sir, when will be the release of the May playlist? So for them, if there are non-clients here yet, we have a product called the Marge playlist, which is for those, which is a list of stocks that we recommend for those customers or investors that are not able to look at the stock market on a day-to-day basis. So it is a list that's sent out monthly. So where we give you the list of stocks that we think would be a good long-term investment. So it's the next one will actually be released today. So hintay lang, Mr. Ventura. So it will be released later today. And a related question from Aileen Kapulong, how about BDO? We're not yet going to take profit or sell. Gain is quite tempting already. We should wait for the playlist later today, but we are still positive on BDO. It's one of the banks that have shown or was able to meet the market expectations for its first quarter earnings. Next from we have from Ponce on TZ. Ponce, is Globe and RCR undervalued?
Thank you for the question. So for Globe, our sum of the parts analysis on the stock suggests that the Globe is that the stock is indeed undervalued. So that's why we also prefer the stock on the sector because as we wrote in our short takes recently, it is if you compare the SIM registration of Globe to its peers, it's actually quite lagging. However, its registered SIMs already represent a larger portion of its mobile revenues. So to put it simply, Globe is the nearest in terms of securing its mobile revenues ahead of the registration deadline. So that's one, and also because of the improving mobility and the reopening of the economy, we think Globe is in the best position to reap the benefit from that. So and also third Mint is also planning to list in the market in the next 2 years. So that should also that should have another positive implications on Globe for its valuation. So and for RCR, um, we think right now we think it's fairly valued. So because of its dividend yield already offers a premium to the risk-free rate, and its premium is equal to that of MREIT and AREIT. So we think it's fairly valued. So right now we reiterate our preference for CREIT because its premium is quite attractive compared to the risk-free rate, and also because CREIT should continue to benefit from the elevated spot rates.
What about the technical perspective on Globe?
Oh, cool. So clearly, Globe is still in a downtrend, still below the 200-day moving average. But if there's, I think the momentum seems to be slowing down a little bit. So for the bulls on Globe, it looks like it could be a falling wedge scenario here for Globe, but still down. You have to wait for the trade.
And just to be for the information of our viewers, what's the falling wedge scenario?
Falling wedge is a reversal pattern. It's a bullish reversal pattern, but it needs to be trade above this line here, 1850, complete.
Okay. From Shane Custodio again, what's SGP's prospects, at least in the short term? So I think that would be technical. SGP?
Oh, SGP. Okay, SGP not the best looking chart. Yeah, it looks like it's oversold now. So hopefully, it can, for those holding the stock, it can bounce soon at the bottom of this range. So it looks like it's short-term bounce or some of that.
For SGP, also we wrote about it from today's short takes. We said that there was I think a news article that said that the government is looking to take back the control of NGCP. So we think that's one of the reasons that's causing the weakness And also, if you look at it at SGP's quarterly dividends, it's already at the downtrend. So this suggests maybe some pressure on cash flows. And right now, ERC is also looking at NGCP's rate rebasing, so that could imply a lower transmission rate for NGCP, which has negative implications for SGP.
And for our last question, so we're running out of time. So our last question from Mr. Chris Yao, or considering MPI's purchase of SPNEC, are there any possible legal hurdles in the Philippines considering MPI will be both a power producer and a distributor at the same time?
Well, MPI already has a stake on Meralco, and Meralco is already a power producer and a distributor. Because first, Meralco started as a distributor, and now it's already creating. It already has a portfolio of its own generation of assets. It's all its own power plant generation. So Meralco is already a distributor and a generator. So MPI already has a stake on that. So you can say that currently MPI is already a power producer and distributor. And if ever and since MPI already purchased SPNEC, we think the SPNEC's contracts will still undergo yung competitive selection process. So before it secures its power contract. So it's not naman automatic na since SPNEC and Meralco are both under MPI na SPNEC will be able to secure its contract. So it will still undergo CSPs so that Meralco will still be able to secure the most cost efficient contracts for its captive market.
And that's it. So I hope we were able to answer all of your questions adequately. If not, you can tune into the next live session, which will be in 2 weeks. So watch out for that. And thank you again for joining in this latest edition of Beyond Connections. And we'll see you next week. Tama ba?